But usually what happens is, after a file goes, to your calendar and it goes to the pitch and you sold it, you could typically remove it unless you want to do like a follow-up later on, because everything else is automated through like BV, or you can create your own automation. As long as you set up the expectation up front, because that will burn your time as well. So if you set them up right up front properly, it'll alleviate you from having to babysit and do constant check-ins, which take time, right? Because if you check in like, yeah, I'm gonna give you a call every week, now you have to hold yourself accountable to that 1 week, every week phone call, which can drain about 20-30 minute conversation from you here and there. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah.
So, where do you want to start?
How do you find more time in the day?
Time in the day? Yeah, so because you have so many different things going on, right? So many different objectives, so many different tasks, so many things that require your attention, from like the call block to, balancing of origination to doing callbacks or what have you. And the best recommendation I can have is that you slot your day in certain blocks that are designed for certain objectives. And so each and every single day we have primary objectives and then variable objectives. So variable objectives are going to be things that are spontaneous, right? So like your client calls in with a set of questions, fire erupts, value comes back low. Those are variables because they're not necessarily planned, right? So each and every single day, I personally use Outlook Calendar, and that's one screen that I have open constantly. And when I look at my Outlook Calendar, I look at today and the next day. So it's very, very important, right? And so practicing this is going to help you when your pipeline grows, because if there's no organized time slots, then it's kind of, you're reacting to things, right? As opposed to being proactive. And so where I believe that, using a calendar is helpful, but then how do you manage that calendar? So again, we have variable objectives and then primary objectives. So primary objectives are things you have to do every single day, which obviously, if let's say, we work 10 hours per day, right? So a minimum of 4 hours needs to be dedicated to the primary objective of new loan origination. So new loan origination is actions and habits or things that move the needle, things that actually feed the pipeline. So in our particular case, your sole objective is to get loans in so you could feed the PAQ, right? Because in order to feed the PAQ, you need a structured sold deal with STIPs in. Make sense? So every single day, your point system should be determined by that. I think you guys call them OGs, right? Originations, right? So we call them subs, elevations, same thing, right? Yeah. So that is a primary objective, and the reason for that is because your intent is to get a minimum of one new elevated loan per day, or one OG per day, and that's going to put you on pace for 20 for the month, with the expectation that, let's say 25 to 30% fall out, you're still above 10 units and you're making bank, right? So another primary objective is closing. So you not only have origination, which you might think that, well, closing is part of origination. In my particular sales process, I don't think it is, right? I think closing is part of origination, but origination is more of marketing and finding prospects to bring to the close table, right? So 4 hours of origination, and then a minimum of 1 hour to 2 hour slots of just strictly closing. And the reason why you want to block that off is because number one is it allows you to solely focus on origination within that block period. So let's say you have 2 blocks of 2 hours, or 1 block of 3 hours and another block of 1 hour, and you're going to be strategic based on your licensing, right? So if you're licensed predominantly in California or in the West Coast, the best practice would be to probably put your origination from 11 to 1, because these people are on lunch breaks, right? Or maybe 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock, right? Because they're maybe on a break or they can cut away. Whereas closing, I would put 5:30 and past. So 5:30 and past is solely on closing, so you're not necessarily doing follow-up calls to see if you can, you know what I mean, complete an application, or you're not chasing steps. It's solely focused on closing. And so why that's important, and there's gonna be things that erupt, and then this is where your calendar system comes into play. So for origination, anytime, in my opinion, how I manage my pipeline and how a lot of these guys manage their pipeline is that if you make it onto my calendar, you earned it, right? Same philosophy goes with if you get into the LOS system, you've earned it, because they're not just pushing everything to Encompass. Right? Because there's a lot of phone calls you just got to weed out, maybe doesn't get that far. Right? But if you get to LOS, I'm spending time, you're moving to my calendar, and that calendar is going to progressively move through certain milestones. So milestones on the calendar is going to be like a color system, right? So if I have, let's say if I talk to you in my origination period, and then I got a deal, I could source up the deal, I could structure, there's something there that I can give you, you've earned a spot on my calendar. And then now you're basically moving to my close period. But now you become a green, like I use green, because when I look at my calendar, I'm gonna see multiple appointments, right? So there's gonna be different slots and things happening. But if you stand out and you're green, I know I can't move that. I have to be solely focused on your appointment. Make sense? Yeah. But if you're not green, I can move it. So it's like a priority list. Yeah. And so your calendar should be filled up with these things where, let's say if you get into my calendar, you're on my close block and you're green, means I'm pitching you. If I didn't close you, then you turn yellow, right? And then you move to the next day or whatever time to follow up. Because yellow just basically means a little bit of a slower process. I gotta slow down, and in my opinion, like that's just a system that I use. But nonetheless, it's still important. If it's, now let's move to spontaneous variable objectives like fires, right? So I'll paint it red, meaning that is something that I need to stop and handle. Now, the tedious tasks, like putting out fires, we call them kissing the frog, like the conversations you don't necessarily want to have. The best time to do that is in the morning, because you're amped, you're revved, you know what I mean? Like you need to get it off your plate to clear your mindset for the rest of the day, because you don't want it lingering on, where most LOs will kind of push that off to get warmed up when that's actually sitting on your conscience, and then it's affecting the rest of your production. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, I have one right now where it's just, it's a fire. It's, it's proof that this home was sold, and I need 1040s. And I was like, it's a W-2 employee, but they found an LLC somewhere that he owns. So that's just exactly.
So those things that you'll get, you can only really learn from through experience. And so like, just button up your questions when it comes to income, right? So like where most LOs will say, what do you do for work? They'll say, I'm an engineer. Okay, got it. Engineer, how much do you make? 115 grand. Got it, 115, and move on to the next question, right? Buttoning up, it goes a little bit more defined because you've been burned before. Right? So another way to button it up would be like, oh, that's awesome. How long have you been with your company? You're looking for 2 years of employment history, right? So say 3 years. Got it. They pay you a W-2 or 1099, right? Oh, I get paid a W-2, but because you brought up 1099, now I'm influenced to tell you, oh, I have 1099 income though. Get it? And that's where you find out the LLC, and this guy's a contractor, so what, so on and so forth. And then that will save you time, because then you'll be like, okay, 1099, I got to make sure he's not writing off the income to where his W-2 is now at a loss of income. Got it? Because then that creates the fires. Right. And so basically you redirect the conversation to control it more, get the documents in, have ILA scenarios, bless it, have it pre-underwritten in a sense, and then determine to put more time into it. Right? Because the reason why it seems like you don't have a lot of time is because there's more time than necessary being put in areas that is really draining your time. Right? So you're spending a lot of time, it's not your fault, you just don't really, you don't have the experience. Right. But learn from everything that right now is burning up your time. And so next time you go around, say, how could I have overcome that? How could I avoid that the next time? And the next time is really just breaking it down. And so if you get processing questions like, hey, his overtime is inconsistent, then look back and say, okay, well, how did I ask him that question? And most of the time you're gonna see, it's like you took a lump sum and you divide it by 12. right?
Yeah.
So buttoning up the question would be more like, okay, so you earn 115, how much of that is just salary? Oh, that's 80,000 is salary. Got it. And so about 35 of it is overtime. About 25 and they get a 10K bonus. Now it brings on other questions, right? Because you need a 2-year history of overtime and then also consistency of bonuses. Otherwise, you can't even use it, right? So there's plenty of times where I've had conversations where overtime is a new thing, right? Oh no, I rarely work overtime, or no, it just started this year because our company grew. So I have to ignore that, right? Because if I use it, we have a biased opinion because we want to use it because it makes our deal work, right? But at the same time, we got to also find things that are going to kill the deal because that's going to drain your time later on. When it gets back to the processing, then your processor is hitting you with all these conditions. And then now you have a lot of, red appointments on your calendar, which are basically fires, and you need to stop and put them out, right? So I would say to have more time is just be more protective of your time and just really kind of analyze your daily activity and know where most of your time is going right now, right? So if you're looking at, let's say your average talk time is high, that's good, but how many people are you talking to, right? So if you're spending a lot of time like doing an application, and let's say you spend 45 minutes and then you find out that you can't do a deal, then you're burning your time.
Yeah.
Right? So one thing that I used to do is just move my declaration questions to the front. So I'm asking questions right off the bat, with regards to like bankruptcies, solar panels, solar liens, equity lines, right? Whereas most LOs go in order and they ask that 45 minutes in. So, I was a co-signer of a home that short sold. Damn, I just burned 35 minutes with you talking about a deal that you can't even get if you want to. You see what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so that in itself, these little saves, like I'll save 20 minutes here, 15 minutes here, 13 minutes here, will add up to where now you have freed up time, But at the same time, because we have so many different people that we deal with, from operations to prospects to follow-ups to referrals to current pipeline management, they all need to have its own rank in our daily schedule. And this is where the color system comes into play. But usually what happens is, after a file goes, to your calendar and it goes to the pitch and you sold it, you could typically remove it unless you want to do like a follow-up later on, because everything else is automated through like BV, or you can create your own automation. As long as you set up the expectation up front, because that will burn your time as well. So if you set them up right up front properly, it'll alleviate you from having to babysit and do constant check-ins, which take time, right? Because if you check in like, I'm gonna give you a call every week, now you have to hold yourself accountable to that 1 week, every week phone call, which can drain about 20, 30-minute conversation from you here and there. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So if we're to analyze where you're spending most of your time right now, where would you say it goes?
When I get docs in, I'm ready to just go and lock it in and go. I mean, I don't have more sort of a structure. That's what I'm trying to get in. Have a structure, take calls, and then whatever I have, any kind of fires I have, take care of it then. When I get docs, lock it, OG it there, follow-ups. But my main thing right now is when I come in, I feel like I spend too much time on my email instead of taking calls.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay, so emails, you talk about emails from ops or borrowers?
From everyone.
From everyone, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so emails is, I know exactly what you mean. As an SM, you receive a ton of emails, but you then prioritize them, right? So get into the habit of knowing that just because you got an email doesn't mean you necessarily need to respond right away, right? Also, depending on the context of that email, you can delegate some of those tasks. So in other words, it's basically saying, like, if you got a borrower that has questions on the status, it's not a matter of stopping what you're doing to then find out and then answer them immediately, even though that's what we want. What you do is you come together with like a default response. Kind of default response is saying, I actually have a meeting with your team by the end of this week. So let's say if it was, let's say Wednesday, right? I should have a meeting with your team by the beginning of next week. But if it was Monday, I'll say, I should have a meeting. I have a meeting with your team by the end of this week. If I have an update sooner, I'll let you know, right? And so now what I'm doing is from there, I bought myself some time and then I'm delegating the update. unless the file is somewhat close to closing.
Yeah.
Right? So if I notice that I got maybe 15 days left on the lock and it's still in conditional approval, then I'm changing my approach, and I'm keeping it the same with the borrower and saying, hey, yeah, I have an appointment with your closing department or your processing team at the end of this week. I'll give you an update if I hear anything sooner, right? But when I send a message to ops, it's formatted in a way and saying, you know, and this is again urgency. Like, but if it had like 40 days and this person just went into processing, I'm not necessarily using this approach, right?
Right.
So if it's like 15 days left on the lock, conditional approval should get somewhere toward closing, I'm approaching ops and saying, you know, first being courteous and saying, hey Mo, I appreciate your help on this file. I know you're slammed, but I have an appointment to call this person at 3 o'clock today. If there's anything I can grab for you while I have them on the phone, just let me know to help you get this off your desk, right? And you just let that sit there. So they'll answer you whenever the borrower is not anxious to hear back from you. You're not anxious to give a call back because it's already, you're kind of setting the train in motion and it's kind of moving along, right? So you have all these different tracks and you're delegating. So you're putting things out and they'll circle back when it comes to that time.
Right.
Make sense?
Oh yeah.
And then the best way to do it is like if there's something that requires your time, this is where the color system comes into play. So maybe you do a yellow reminder slot in your calendar and put like follow up Mo, right? Follow up Mo on closing questions.
Right.
You know, and then in the habit of copy and pasting the BV URL into the appointment so it's very easy to track, because that also takes time. You know, looking up the phone number, right? Pulling up the BV, looking through the notes, right? Where you can literally, the body of the calendar appointment, you can add notes in there that can technically be your con log. So anytime you open it up, you're just quickly reminded, as opposed to shit, where did I put the note? Encompass or BV? Because all that takes up time. So it's just a matter of being efficient. But so emails in itself is something that, you know, you're gonna be able to learn how to adapt to. You know, times when I go through emails, like a little bit towards the end of my morning routine. So a little bit before I come in, like, oh, well, let's say I'm making coffee or whatever, I'm going through my emails and deleting what doesn't need my attention. You may not necessarily get those right now though. Rather, you know, as opposed to like updates, like generic emails that go to all of sales. Those don't require your attention right then and there, right? So you could visit those later. But if it's something like a borrower, a fire, then you just set it in motion. Hit the response back and say, hey, I was actually just gonna give you an update. I got a meeting with your team at the end of next week. Again, you're buying yourself time. While still, second email is forwarding out to operations and saying, hey, I got a call with this person at 3 o'clock for an update. Is there anything I can give, I can collect for you? So now it's already handled,
right? As
opposed to eating up a lot of your time, right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Of course, yeah. And then another question I had, I know right now rates are great, right? Everyone's rate and terming. Eventually they're gonna go back up. We're gonna have to start doing cash out. I have clients right now that are going cash out and they're at 3.5, they're taking cash out and they're going all the way up to maybe 4.75 or 5. What's the best way to pitch that to them? Because nobody wants their rate to go up.
Right.
Yeah.
So are you talking about like people who do cash out and now you're giving them a higher rate?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the best way to do it is first find out why they want the cash. And typically it's for what?
Consolidating debts, credit cards.
So ultimately what that loan becomes is a stepping stone, right? So what happens is they'll understand that term you're putting in place is not the one all be all. It's not the final term. It's just the stepping stone to get to where they want. And so as long as they understand that there's a plan in place, they don't feel like they're gonna be stuck. Make sense?
Yeah.
So this is where the pitch strategy comes into play. And you basically pitch the rate at the very end because you get them bought in on the plan first, right? So, hey Mo, I was actually putting your disclosures together and I noticed a few things and I wanted to run it by you first, right? So I was going through your credit bureau and a lot of the comments have a lot to do with your credit card balances. And so my idea was that if we were to take your total payment, and your total payment is the mortgage plus these credit card debts, of course you're gonna ask them how much you sent on this credit card, right? How much you sent on that Chase, how much you sent on that Barclays, whatever. You add it all together and say, I got an idea. I think we can bring this total payment down to this with that extra cash flow, you can replenish your savings, rebuild your FICO, and then in about 6 to 9 months, your FICO score is going to should be north of 740 or 760. Yeah. Now, you did mention that you want to keep this house, so I think I can help you actually reduce the terms after your FICO is at a much stronger much stronger state, as well as you have X amount of money in the bank. But I wanted to get your feedback first, is make sure that's even on track with what you're trying to do. Yes, that's what I'm trying to do. Yeah. Okay, got it. So this is what it would look like. Your total payment would be here. After about 9 to 12 months of payments, you'll have enough seasoning for your FICO score to have improved. At that time, what I see us doing is getting you into a 20-year fixed, or maybe even a 25-year fixed. Ultimately, what that will do is reduce your overall life of the loan by 3 years. And then you take their total P&I and you multiply it by 36. Right. If we do that, that'll save you a total of $110,000 in mortgage payments. You see how they're buying into it? Yeah. Yeah. So not only that, but you're going to be able to pay the house off 3 years sooner. Your FICO score will be this much. You'll have a year's worth of money in the bank. You have no credit card debt, and your overall liabilities will have reduced by $600. How do we do this, Mo? Yeah. Got it. Okay, so let me go ahead and send out the disclosures, and this is where the lock script comes in. Now I hit record. So when I send out the disclosures to you, right, I never say I'm going to record a lock script, because then they get nervous. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So I hit the record button and say, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and send out the disclosures. It's gonna look like this. Loan amount $310,000. It's a 30-year fixed loan at 4.75%. And even if they come back and say, ooh, 4.75, no, don't worry. Because if you remember, Mo, you're only gonna have this for 9 to 12 months, and then we're gonna get you in 25-year term. Shorter terms have much lower interest rates, especially if you're not doing cash out. Get it? Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. Because what they do is then they justify through logic of saying, but I want that result and I'm down to do it. Okay, as long as we're not going to be in this long term, you've answered my primary concern about the interest rate.
You answer it before they even ask it.
Correct. Yeah, it's strategic though, right? So because I've already seen the objection happening. So I know that they're going to question that, and it's more powerful of saying, oh no, but if you remember, Mo, you're only going to be here for 9 to 12 months. Oh yeah, you did say that. Okay, go. Get it? The problem is though, is that when before we even get them at that climatic state of wanting it, we're going in and saying, okay, I got option 1, 30-year fix at 4.75, your payment is this, but you could do this, this, and this. You've already lost them because they didn't like what you said up front. Yeah. You see what I'm saying?
That first part of it, they're done.
Right, they're done. They've already made their decision. But if you put that in reverse and talk about the results first, right? And it all comes in the idea of, hey, I found something. I want to run it by you first, get your feedback on it. That's the perfect way to open up the pitch, right? Because now they're more in tune, and you have a default. You have a kind of a breakaway, like an alternative, like you can sway. So if they say, yeah, I don't want to pay off any debt, no worries. I thought you'd say that. But if it is important for you to improve your FICO, reduce your overall term by 3 years, save this much money, then I would strongly recommend considering that, right? But it rarely happens because they always buy into it. And that's what's gonna increase your close ratio. So anyone that goes to the pitch table, you should be at 80 to 90% closing ratio. Yeah. Because it's already sold, right? And the momentum's already going. And then from there, it's a matter of setting up the urgency of getting the steps in. Yeah. Yeah. So you never tell them they're locked, right? You can always say, I can request a reservation, but my manager will only let me hold it for 24 hours. So if the market worsens, at least you have a reservation, but I need to show him your full document, your full file within 24 hours, or he's going to snag that reservation. Right. And then we're going to be prone to open market. Now it's the fear of missing out.
Of getting all the steps in.
Yeah, you get them in fast, and then you'll get it down packed enough where you can hear it in their tone, and you can go and lock without a full package because they're already in that pace. Like, yeah, I'll get it, because they'll tell you, yeah, I could have it to you tonight. I'm locking them, right? But the problem is though, if they're not really bought into it and they have concerns, they want to think about it, don't lock it, because chances are they'll talk themselves out of it, and then you just gotta kind of look back and say, okay, what could I have done different?
And then as far as disclosures, do you send disclosures out Because on a couple of recent ones, I've been sending disclosures out before locking, just to say, okay, you know, here it is, sign this form, you get a commitment before I go to the lock. I got all docs. Is that something you would recommend? Some disclosures?
Yeah, I always kind of like hold the disclosures as something they need to earn, right? So the disclosures, the whole idea right after the first conversation is the disclosure is that they get what they get. It's not a matter of me searching for a rate for them, right? So I'll say that, okay, I'll go and put together your disclosures and I'll send it out to you. You'll get an email notification once they're ready. If I have any questions or run into any hiccups, I'll give you a call first.
Right.
And that becomes the second call or the pitch call. You see what happens. So in the first conversation, I already know when both of them are going to be available because I let them know and say, hey, you know, I do need your consent so I don't have to mail these documents to your door. It's gonna be like 100 pages with a lot of sensitive information. I'd rather send it to you electronically. When are you gonna be at home, either at a home computer or iPad or tablet, to give consent to me for me to deliver them electronically? And I say home computer. So they believe what they perceive, right? Like, oh, I have to be at a home computer to give consent. So I'm gonna be at a home computer, or I could do it from a home tablet at 5:30. Okay, got it. What about the missus? Oh yeah, she's a homemaker, she'll be there. Okay. And so I don't say I'm gonna give you a call 5:30. I've already made my appointment to give you a call around, just so happen to be 5:30, I got questions.
The hiccup.
Right, the hiccup comes in, right? So then I give them a call at 5:30. Hey, you know what, I was actually preparing your disclosures, about to send it out. I found something, I wanted to get your feedback first. Mind put me on speakerphone? Now they're at the pitch table, but there's no guard. Right? Because they're not saying, hey, I got some options for you. And now their brain capacity is like, oh man, I got to make a decision, right? You're basically making the decision for them at that point.
Right.
Yep.
And then the last thing is just, I know Ray's always selling discount points. I have some people who are like, oh, when they hear it, you know, oh, I don't want to pay it. No.
Yeah.
What's kind of a way around that as far as explaining to them, listen, this is beneficial for you?
Yeah, so the reason why buyers or consumers are hesitant from discount points is because of triggers, right? So if you think about media and you think about advertising, a lot of our competitors, a lot of even us, we go based off saying, yeah, we don't charge points, right? Advertisements, no broker points.
Right.
So they hear points.
Yeah.
And so even if we say, what about discount points? It's still triggering because they don't understand the difference, right? So instead, what I will do is when you present it to them, you present it to them in a way and say, hey, you know, because we have this short window or this small window of time where the market is where it's at, we don't know when it's going to go back up. So if in the event you want to complete the last refinance that you ever do, here's an idea. I can get your interest rate down to here and your total payment would be this. What are your thoughts? Because you're selling them down, you're selling them on the payment first. And they say, yeah, how do I do that? Well, how you do it is you prepay interest. Interest on real estate, as you know, Mo, is 100% tax deductible, right? So you can have this rate and not prepay interest, or you can have this rate by prepaying interest, have it for the life of the loan. So what happens is next year when the market raises up, you have an unheard of rate. Right? So this is more strategic planning. This is to ensure that you don't ever have to refinance ever again. Now, I wouldn't sell points on a cash out loan because their goal is to use it as a stepping stone. Not only that, but typically with a cash out loan, because of debt consolidation, their FICO is so low, right? And you're not positioning them properly. So points are more for that rate and term person and shortening the term. So they're basically getting more for the money, but I wouldn't present it to them as points, right? I present it to them as prepaid interest. And as you know, Mo, interest in real estate is fully tax deductible. So in your 2019 write-off or your 2020 write-off, you just bring the statement to your CPA and they're gonna be able to get some of that back for you. So it's a win-win, right? Yeah. So, but at the end of the day also, if you know, say the reason why I want to ask you that is because of your income bracket. A lot of people, you know, if they're earning high amount of income, then they may like the higher interest rate. But if I got somebody on a fixed income, then I say, you know, the interest rate, the monthly interest is not really a benefit for you. So by prepaying interest, you get the lower rate to be more compatible with your fixed income. Make sense? Now it's more of a logical decision. right? And so this will protect your fixed income for the life of the loan, especially if they know that they're not going to pay the house off.
Right.
They're just looking for a comfortable payment.
And then they go, but my loan amount's going to go up 4 or 5K. I don't want my loan amount to go up that much.
Say, I thought you'd say that. So here's the solution to that. Because we're deferring your mortgage payment and you're going to get a refund anyway, technically you have the money there. Otherwise, if you're concerned about going $4,000 over the course of 30 years, it breaks down to $3 per month.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Yeah.
So you show them both ends of it and they're like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
Right.
Right? Say, at the end of the day, you don't need to go with that lower interest rate. You know, like it's just completely, you know, preference at that point. Right? But if you're able to buy your interest rate down a full point, it's a matter of you know, comfort. And just not only that, but you could proudly say to all your neighbors, you know, I got a 2.75% interest rate.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? And then they envision it and they want to talk about it, and then that's what makes them want to buy it.
Right. So use payment deferral. Maybe how about escrow refund? Can you say that too? Like
Yeah.
you get the refund back if you put it back into the loan.
Exactly.
You're good.
Yeah. Because what happens is if they don't refi, they don't get the payment deferral, the escrow refund anyway. That makes sense. So either way, they're going to get it, and if you didn't need it, then just go ahead and put it in there. But I would recommend you pocket that, because that can help you either put money in the bank for a rainy day, because you mentioned to me, and this is all because you're asking the right questions up front. So you mentioned to me you only have in checking and savings about $600. I would say you keep it, because that $4,000 on the loan amount on the course of 30 years is really like $3.75. I'd rather have $5,000 in the bank than be worried about $3 extra per month. You probably waste more than that on cable TV, right? They're gonna say, oh, hell yeah, I pay cable TV $70 a month.
Yeah.
Got it. I'm talking about your mortgage though. Right. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you just point out things that they'll relate to, and then as long as it makes sense and it's logical, they'll buy into it. But the issue lies where LOs don't address it, and they won't conform the response that's applicable to them, right? So it's not something that they can relate to. It's under the terms or lingo that they don't understand, right? Well, your amortization over 30 years is going to be far more better in your, but well, tell me why though? How is it better than, how does it help me on my day to day?
Yeah.
Right. So if you say things like, I'm sure you probably spend way more of this on your cell phone bill, right? Oh yeah, cell phone bill. So like they think $130. Well, this is only $3 in comparison. There's like, oh yeah, okay, it makes sense. Right?
Yeah. The one thing I steer away from now is using LTV, DTI. I kind of just try to break it down into more common talk, right? So they understand it. Because if you say LTV, DTI, they go, yeah, sure.
Yeah. Stay away from the lingo that only we understand, because then that creates question. And whenever they have doubt or they feel not like inadequate, right? Like shit, they're uncomfortable, and so then their defense mechanism comes in, and they'd say no. Yeah. Because they don't understand what the LTV or DTI meant. But if you say it, like you said, in relatable terms or understandable terms, then they're in sync with you and you guys get each other. Right? And their defense mechanism isn't there. It's more of a collaboration. You guys you're meshing well because you're working on their behalf. You're serving them based specifically on their goals. Not, hey, this sounds smart, I'm a financial consultant or whatever. Yeah. Right? Because it can't be that way. It's like you're making the decision for them. And that's why it's very useful to use the strategy of, you know what, I had an idea, let me run it by you first. Got it?
It's not a pitch.
Right. They feel like they're the ones making the decision. Super powerful.
Yeah.
Cool.
Excellent.
Helpful?
Of course. Yeah.
Word, man. Appreciate it, dude.